Call meeting to order Tuesday, February 19th at 6:35 p.m. Roll call, please.
Kane.
Here.
Deline. Erickson.
Here.
Boone.
Here.
Schott.
Here.
Megan. Here. Anderson.
Here. The agenda was sent out on Friday. Are there any changes or amendments?
Were we gonna try and add executive session before new business?
Okay.
Or what do you want to do that?
I think first item under new business, I'd like to add executive session for personnel and then the update on the golf course candidates. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Boone second.
Motion made by Erickson, seconded. All in favor to adopt the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is adopted, and then minutes from the February 4th meeting were also attached. Is there a motion to approve the February 4th meeting minutes? Motion made by Svagen and seconded to approve the February 4th minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Visitors to be heard. First, Mr. Mark Luke from Solar Power Opportunities.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. We met with Jerry and Jay before, talked about the opportunity of doing like a community solar farm. Wanted to present a little bit of information, see if the council would be interested in knowing more about that. Molly Brown with GenPro is a teammate of mine. We are working together. They have done many community solar farms in Nebraska. And so we wanted to present some information about that and let you know how well that's working there and see if there's some place we can go with it from there. I guess I'm going to run the computer for her.
So as Mark mentioned, I'm from GenPro Energy Solutions, and we're actually based out of Piedmont, South Dakota. We've been around since 2003, and we're born out of the solar water pumping industry, mainly for ag. So a lot of cattle feeders and pumping systems for things like that. Since then, we've expanded into 3 divisions. We've got an energy and efficiency and lighting division, a solar division, which I run, and then a backup generation division, which does large-scale backup generators. You can go ahead, Mark. And one more. Just a little bit about the solar division. We've made the top solar contractors list in the United States for the last 5 years in a row, which is very nice because we're the only ones in the region who do the type of work that we do. And in the last year, we actually jumped up about 200 spaces on that list. So we are now in the top 200 of solar contractors in the country. And we operate a little bit differently than most EPC firms or contracting firms because we actually do our own development work too. So we primarily work with municipalities, government organizations, to really start a project from when it's just the seed of an idea or you're just exploring on what you could possibly do. And then we take that all the way through the full construction, commissioning, and a lot of times into operations and maintenance and helping with long-term maintenance of those solar farms. This is an example of one of our projects down in Nebraska. This is a 3.91 megawatt solar farm. It was the largest of its kind in the state at the time. It's not anymore, but we hope to get that title back one day. And this is just a utility scale system that feeds directly into the municipal utilities grid, and they use it as part of their power generation portfolio, and it just goes directly into their grid. This is another system down in Nebraska, which was for a wastewater treatment plant, and it was a 500 kW system, so it was still a ground mount system that took up quite a bit of acreage. But this is what we would call a behind the meter project, which means that that solar is feeding that facility directly. So it's not just going out on the utility grid, they are actually offsetting the consumption of that solar facility. And just some of our work that we've done in South Dakota, we work with the National Guard. We've done almost all of their buildings across the state for lighting and energy efficiency already. And we did their first solar system in Huron last year. And this was a roof mount system that goes directly into the armory, and it was on Northwestern Energy's line. And again, it was a behind the meter, so it's just feeding into that facility. And this is another example of a roof mount project, which was with Black Hills State University. They have 100% sustainability goals for the university, and in using this and coupled with their WAPA allocations and some other things, we're going to be able to get them pretty close to those goals a lot sooner than they would have otherwise. So a few more examples of projects that we've done. In 2018, we did a 1.3 megawatt tracked ground mount system for the City of Fremont Utilities. And that was a true community solar project. So half of that system was, the panels were sold directly to the community, and we actually were able to pass through the tax credits to the end users in that case. So any resident of the City of Fremont could sign up for their community solar system and take some tax breaks. And then the other half of the system was sold as just energy purchase blocks. So if people didn't have a lot of upfront capital to go purchase 10, 20 solar panels out of this solar farm, they could just purchase a number of kilowatt hours per month and have that offset what they currently pay on their utility bill. So it's a very, very good model for community solar type projects. We've done quite a few wastewater treatment plants as well, that those as a municipality tend to be your biggest energy user. So a lot of times municipalities are looking to save money on those facilities in particular. The next project we have upcoming that we're pretty excited about is with Nebraska Public Power District and the City of Scottsbluff. And that's going to be a 5.2 megawatt community solar project. So all of the energy off of that particular system is going to go to residential and commercial businesses within Scottsbluff. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, why not South Dakota? Well, we've got a lot of different rules, regulations, and utility contracts than we do down in Nebraska. You guys are in a very unique position that you can actually do something and are working with a feeder utility that allows you to have a percentage of the energy you buy be renewable. So it's pretty few and far between in South Dakota to even be allowed to do these types of renewable projects. And so what are we seeing in terms of energy in general? We're really taking the move from what we see as big centralized power. So you've got a ginormous wind farm over here that's 100, 200 megawatts, and you have all these transmission and distribution lines to get the energy close to the source. Well, the more transmission and distribution you have, the higher the cost. So even though that giant wind farm may produce energy at a super cheap rate, it's not so cheap once you start adding in those extra feeders and wheeling costs and moving the power down the line. So we're really starting to see people look at more focused distributed generation. So how can we have a solar farm or something that's close to the source? Now we're even looking at energy storage so that there's a lot less travel for that energy to go in between, and we're really just generating and using what we need to be fully sustainable. So for municipalities, there's really three types of solar projects. There's behind the meter, which is feeding directly into that facility. There's a community solar project in which you put a large scale farm, which allows you to get economies of scale, but you sell that off to residents and commercial businesses. Some of the munis we work with actually do carve out a section of those so they can, put some of that energy towards their municipal buildings and facilities as well. And then there's municipal utility solar, and that's just putting a farm somewhere close to town, feeds directly into your grid, and you just use it as part of your power source. And so for you as a community, just the way that you're structured, the community solar and the municipal utility solar are really the two types of project structures that would make the most sense because we could get a large enough scale system built that your cost of energy would be almost equal to what you're currently paying. And in the end, that's the end goal. Can the solar produce energy at the same or less of a cost than you're currently buying it for? So what is community solar? It can be owned by the utility or it can be third-party financed. So that means there's a lot of big nationals, NextEra out of Florida. There's Florida Power and Light that does a lot of these projects as well. So a third party will come in, they will pay all the upfront costs. They'll get a land lease from the city. You guys don't have to do anything but buy energy off of that system at a set rate, and those contracts are generally from 25 to 30 years. And because we are where we are in the Midwest, we generally set those with a 0% escalator. So you are locking in a specific energy rate for 25 to 30 years, which is nice because you're really hedging your bets over which way electricity is gonna go. We all think it's gonna go up. I don't think anybody thinks it's gonna go down over the long term. And it allows you to budget and lock in at least for that set amount of energy. And then you can gain economies of scale through one large installation. One more. So one of the things that we developed in the last 2 years is a program around community solar. And it's really a template that we can bring to each community to try and figure out what the interest is going to be. So the first step of that is we've developed a survey that you can actually give to all of your customer base to gauge interest. You can put it in as a bill insert into your utility bills, and we can do email blasts or even newspaper ads, things like that. And that allows us to crunch those numbers, see how much of an interest there is, if there really is an interest at all. And I've been really surprised at the results of some of these surveys. We're working with the village of Hemingford in Nebraska, which is a very, very small ag town of about 1,200 people on the west side of the state. And the response rate that they got back on their surveys and the interest that they got back on their surveys was a lot greater than I ever would have thought. And so people are really starting to take an interest in this, but this is also a way for us to get to know your specific customer base. So we also will set up community events. We like to gather what we call city council ambassadors, 1 or 2 people who are going to be really the proponents of the project. We'll help design marketing materials. I think Mark has already sent around an example of some of the marketing materials to some of the folks at the city. But that's something that we just do as a value add to our projects because we want to make sure that the project's going to be successful for you guys and successful for the community, and we're really getting you what you want. And we also help identify any anchor clients that you may have. So, the K through 12 schools, it doesn't make sense all the time to put solar on top of a school because, well, they're not in session in the summer, and even the winter, they're during the They do have usage during the day, but if they could just buy chunks based on their usage, it makes more sense than them spending capital outlay on that. And we really like to answer the following questions. Number 1 question you're going to get asked is, what is this going to do to my bill? Is it going to make it go up or go down? The second is, how does solar actually work? And then why is this important to the community? So we really work with you as a community to get the answers to these questions and come up with an outreach plan to be able to let the rest of the community understand why this is an important project. This is an example of some of the software that we put on the back end of every system, so you'll know exactly how much energy is being produced by your system at any given time. It also gives us alerts if anything goes wrong with the equipment. And if you have a utility department that you want to train up to learn how to use this and to crunch all the data, we are happy to give them that training, or you can just pass off O&M to us as well. There's also an external feature of this where you can put up like these TVs and have it show exactly how many trees you're saving, how many cars you're taking off the street based on the solar energy production of your actual system. And so muni utility solar, again, this could be owned by the utility or through a third-party financed PPA. It really depends on what your goals are as a community. Cash purchases tend to have the lowest cost of energy, but a PPA, you don't have to have any capital outlay and you can fix that power purchase price for a very long term. So we'll help work through all of that with our communities as well. And all the energy produced on this would basically just go directly out onto your grid and be part of your power consumption. But this also gives you the ability, again, to lock in your energy rates for 20 to 30 years. So what's the project development process? We'll fly through these pretty fast. City-owned land is the best if you have any parcels that are available, because that allows us to keep costs down. There's a few things that we look for in terms of the land. No trees. We like it to be flat. You can go ahead and click through these. And it's good to be next to some kind of distribution line that is going to be big enough to handle the solar energy, as well as close to the substation. So this is an example of a utility we were working with, and there's a couple reasons we chose the sites we did. Again, flat, next to a distribution line, no trees, and the areas up at top did not have any of those items. So go ahead. So they had 2 great parcels. And so, for example, this would be a 3 megawatt system, and we do use trackers on these, so they follow the sun during the day. This allows us to get 30% more generation than if you would have a fixed tilt system. Go ahead and click a couple times. So with a power purchase agreement, this is an example of what the price you would pay off of this solar system. So it would be 6.1 cents off of a 3 megawatt solar system. Go ahead and click through. And then for a 5.5 megawatt solar farm, we're closer to about 5.5 cents. Again, with cash purchases, you are getting a lower cost of energy off of that system just because you're not financing those out in the long term, but you tend to have a higher rate of return on your investment if you do finance it out. So those are the 2 main drivers that we look at in terms of projects. And I believe for you guys, you have about a 1 megawatt limit with what you would be able to put in on your current lines, which is about the perfect size for a nice community solar farm that you would be able to offer to your customer base. And I threw a lot out there really quickly, so does anyone have any questions about just solar in general or different types of projects or how it works? The audience can ask questions too.
So I know you showed it, but average size for a community solar setup, whatever, how many acres?
It's about 5 acres, 5 to 7 acres for a megawatt. And we're generally seeing communities do about 500 kW to about 1.5 megawatt chunks for those programs, because you can still get economies of scale, but sell those off a little bit easier than if you were to put a giant system out. The reason Scottsbluff is going so big is because the hospital wants most of the energy. So they had one of those, what we call the anchor clients, that it was driving the building of that system.
You guys would be the first in South Dakota to, you did do a survey in another town in South Dakota?
Well, we did it for the co-op for Butte Electric.
Butte Electric, and they had 70% return?
Yes.
And they'd be interested?
Yeah, it was an incredibly positive feedback off of that survey. And they have an interesting customer base, because we expected that from Spearfish, but they're also up in Newell and Belle-Fourche, and we got as much response, from Newell and Belle-Fourche than we did from the cities that are in Spearfish.
You guys have done a great job of getting new industrial businesses to come to town and commercial businesses, and so talked to Jerry and said, hey, I heard you guys are, you've been very progressive to getting these businesses to town, and so I wanted to see if you'd be interested in, having a discussion about something like this. We're seeing on the commercial industrial where they can take the tax credits and the maker's depreciation on solar, that we're on a 25-year cost of energy. Those kinds of projects are around 2.5 cents a kilowatt. So,
Well, and one of the drivers especially for muni utilities to do this is because as solar gains more and more popularity, you're gonna have everyone in town starting to put up solar systems. And if you can come up with a community solar offering as a utility, so you don't have to deal with all of these different solar systems going up on multiple businesses and having to manage those on your utility lines, it's a little bit of an easier thing to manage. So they're really using it as a preemption to the expectation that solar is gonna gain more and more momentum in these markets, which they are.
I have business cards along if anybody's interested. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Jerry, for giving us a chance to talk. Any questions? More questions?
I think there's some information for everyone to read that we were provided, and maybe educate ourselves a little bit more on the options, and maybe we can chat with our electric department and kind of get some feedback on their experiences. So, I appreciate you coming down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
the
you for
opportunity.
allowing us to present.
No committee or mayor reports, nor department head reports. Moving on to old business. Todd Hansen, Fiber to the Home Project with Far Technology Lights.
Yeah, sure. This is Dave Fridley with Far Engineering, Brian, and Matt Baker. Brian North, sorry about that.
That's a tough last name.
I can't say it either. Thank you for letting us come in. Been working with Todd for a long time, so I go back to when Wayne was a manager and Marilyn was educating me because that was the first muni project I ever worked with. So Marilyn beat me around the head a little bit, but I figured out how to work with her contracts. So we're just going to do a quick little presentation showing what can be done. It's just a few slides. Jump in anytime with questions. We're going to throw a budget at you at the end. And for effect, what you do to do fiber to the home, put the fiber in. So you would awesome do the next one. That's just myself. I'm one of the partners. Far Technologies. Ryan Nordbed heads up my outside plant. Matt Baker's senior network architect. Those are the two guys that are going to make it work. So for Far Technologies, we're all part of a company out of Mitchell. Originally, in my case, back in 1986, started a company called Martin & Associates. It later became Martin Group, and ironically, I was the 30th employee hired. So we became Martin Groups, and then we bought again by CHR out of Texas, and then a little under 7 years ago, 4 of us left and said, we kind of want to be a small company again, so we started having some fun, rather than with 500 and 200 people in engineering. So that's why we went that way. Our company is no brick or mortar. Everybody works from home. A lot of us are on the road all the time anyway. It does make for some interesting situations. Not everybody can work from home. It just sometimes doesn't work. But and it's also tough when you got to go to somebody's house to fire them. Had to do that. That's not. I don't like to fire anybody, but sometimes it just doesn't work. We worked a lot of. In my case, I've worked with virtually every South Dakota company when they bought all the CenturyLink exchanges now. There were 70 of those. I think I was in 55 or 60 of those due diligence for the various cell phone companies. And again, Beresford, as it turned out, was the first one I ever worked as a municipality, and I've done work with Swifttel as well. But since we've been far, this is some of the companies we've worked with just in South Dakota. We call ourselves a regional firm, but we actually have a project in New York because we helped build the New York network, which is like South Dakota network. Long two-year story. So anyway, we've been working with most of them. So that's kind of far. We've been 7 years ourselves in existence, but all of us have been working a long time. In fact, I actually stole Brian from Finley Engineering. If I couldn't beat him, I just hired him. So it's been
That was, what, 17 years ago?
Yeah. So trying to find him a home. Go ahead, Austin. So fiber to premise, it's basically a replacement for your copper and your coax that you have in the town in the day for it's doing your video over your coax and your copper. It can do both. And that's really the big key of fiber. It was a disruptive technology, you know, back in the late 80s, and then it started getting it just as long haul. Now it's going to the homes. It's literally 2000, well, in the late 90s, but really got going in the early 2000s. And you might say the technology curve, and started hitting the top of that technology curve probably 2009, 2010. So most of your South Dakota companies have been doing it. Some are still doing it because they're finishing up, but that's where we're at. A lot of people ask about the capabilities, and it's frankly almost limitless. It's almost, if you, when I get into the really wild, you can get up 320 colors. You can take one fiber, and you can technically feed all of New York City, and then you just keep adding these on there. Very expensive. We don't need to do that here, but just to give you the capabilities of this strand of glass, and they call it wave division multiplexing. Again, not necessarily that you'll be doing it. Sometimes people have to ask them, what's the real capability? How do you outrun it? You're really not doing it. And it's just like copper in that it's at a 30, 35, 40-year lifespan. And in some cases, we've got fiber out there that we put in. The first fiber we put in at Martin Associates was 1978, and it's still going. And when we built the Reed network that you guys are connected to years ago, we actually connected to fiber that was put in the 80s out in western South Dakota that should not have met any of the characteristics we needed to run gigabit traffic between universities. In fact, I made my 2 engineers at the time go out and measure it twice with the test equipment, and then I got a really techie guy from one of our companies who's the smartest guy ever, and we went out the 3rd time because it should not have worked. And they're still hauling traffic on the Reed network on that fiber. It shouldn't have even worked because of those characteristics. That's just kind of amazing to me that those little mice can make all that stuff work. So anyway, it's a very mature technology, been going again since 2001. Next one. So I want to talk about a little bit some of the benefits of Beresford in particular, if you're going to do it. One of the first things as far as promoting your community is to be called a gigabit community. And in order to do that, you have to do some certifications. I have to sign off on it that says, yes, we built it. Yes, it can do these capabilities, which literally is what we would put in is capable. If somebody wants a gigabit to their house, you can have it. I mean, the technology's there. It's a matter of the electronics. I mean, you think you're probably offering, what are you offering now? 10 meg? And
it'll be up to 70 meg.
yeah, so most of it will be, 100 meg is just, you can do any size you want, but a lot of people are just offering 100 meg once it goes. And then again, if you got a business or something that wants more, usually banks want certain things, any of your businesses in town here. Bottom line is they can have pretty much as they want. If they want to write you a check. It'll handle all the issues, all the things I have on there. Obviously, broadband is the big thing for your internet, for people. You get the gamers and streaming video, and you really need a 30 meg. And if they're going to do a lot of streaming, and you have multiple ones, you really are probably at 30 meg to really not have delay. And if anybody's a gamer, Matt is, but I'm old, I don't do much gaming, but it's literally the difference from getting that guy or getting beat yourself is just split seconds. So you need capacity. That's why those guys are just screaming for capacity. Work at home. In our case, with all the work at home, we're loading a lot of big files. We need good capacity. So that's a big deal. And obviously, you can put your video on it eventually. You guys have your separate video system. I mean, that's one of the discussions that Todd, we've had quite a bit. If you move forward with this, we need to talk about how that goes. It's not something that has to be done, but it does affect sometimes the equipment we have at the house, of how we do your video in the future. So it's one of those things, it's just a discussion item, but bottom line for you guys, it will handle all the video. There's even electric companies that are putting their smart meters on there. I mean, you guys are already doing a lot of that, so it's probably less of an impact for you, but there are companies out there that are looking at doing that, and that's when electric's actually paid for part of the bill. Again, talking to Todd, it's a little different situation for you guys here. You're pretty well set up, but again, it's an option down the road for some companies, so that you can be handled. You're still going to have your electric cables, but if you can run your smart meters and some of the gear and have smart homes, you could run it off of the routers that are in the house that run back to your fiber. And it's a partner for your wireless. You can sometimes hear about 5G that's coming out, and it's starting to come into the next great technology in wireless. You basically be a partner. They need somewhere to haul it and a way to haul it. So if you're set up with fiber, because to do 5G, you're really putting equipment on poles, because they have the line of sight 1,000 to 2,000 feet. assuming you don't have a lot of trees. So anyway, there's a lot of technology behind that. But at the end of the day, I look at them as a potential partner rather than necessarily, it can be a competitor, but they gotta get that traffic out of here and into here. So there could be an actual partner if you've got the fiber facilities and they can connect to us at the various access points. And of course, you count to what used to be really important, telephone, you're playing on telephone service. So in effect, anything you need to be done, you know, you have the infrastructure there. Electronics always changes. It's got a 7 to 10 year lifespan, but in effect, when we put the infrastructure in for the fiber, you're pretty well set to go and be a fiber community. And probably, again, what usually gets me when I'm doing these town hall meetings is be a gigabit community so they can advertise that to bring businesses in and people in. If you can advertise that. All right, thank you. Okay, some of the common questions. What are the other utilities? I think I've hit on most of them already. Again, electric utilities are really jumping into this that don't have a telephone company already, and that's where they're partnering in effect with their electric utility to help get it going. And it just becomes a subsidiary of that. And the next great technology is basically 5G, but again, I see that as a partner. We talk about wireless and the capacities, but there's a reason why all the major wireless carriers have fiber to all of their towers. And they started doing that in 2011 and 12. Big rollout. In fact, it pretty much put our industry in shambles because all of a sudden cable orders went from 4 to 8 weeks out to 30 to 40 weeks out because these guys are doing it. Because there's not enough capability to handle all of our traffic, so they got to get it down. So your telephone call on your wireless phone, like, to get to me in Mitchell, it's going to hit your tower. Probably go down from fiber, run to Mitchell, find me again through my tower. It's not all over the airwaves like it started out. So again, they're partners for the fiber. Fiber is what helps with that. Okay, so the build options, there's what they call active, and then there's passive. And this goes with the electronics. We also call what we call an active design, which basically means the dedicated fibers to every house. Or you can do a passive design where you take it out there and you put splitters. In fact, you kind of have that today because you have cabinets out there away from the office where you get cable to there, and then you have cabinets that feed that. So we're an active design, you eliminate all those cabinets. And we have a dedicated fiber all the way back to your central office. And then the passive one is basically just, you've taken it out so far, they put a splitter, and it splits it up into the various channels, and then you could basically like a mini central office right there, and you can see that serve that neighborhood. So that's really the difference of them. You'll hear that a lot of time, active versus passive. So what we propose, basically, a lot of it is based merely on the fact that your central office is fairly central in the town. So if we were going to do it, put splitters out there and all that, it really won't save you very much money. And the active design gives you the best balance for the electronics. There's different types of electronics. They're called GPON or active, which is basically a passive optical electronics, so they can put multiple people on there and they split up the signals and that. Very safe. It's very popular. But with an active design, we don't care what the electronics is. So if we were doing this project, we can go to bid for active vendors as well as what they call GPON vendors. And we'll just take whoever's got the best price. And we put what they call it, we do the GPON, we have to put these splitters in the office, but if we ever, 7 or 8 years from now, we replace it with something else and it becomes active, we just disconnect those splitters. Because that's the nice thing about having an active fiber design for your infrastructure. So that's really where we would, you know, what you're gonna see for numbers is based on that. And again, your central office being fairly well in the middle of town, it works out pretty good. And we think the dedicated fibers also make for your technicians, you have less electronics out in the field, you have less of splitters, even though those are passive, dirt, whatever it is, South Dakota after all. So we're going to get wind and dirt and rain and snow. A lot of wind in that. And future options with it, it's very adaptable. Again, because of the way its lifespan and the way what you can do with it. Again, even in your case, let's face it, Sioux Falls is still growing. You have some, you've identified some areas, Jerry's identified some areas where there might be some builds. All we need to do is figure out on the design part, you know, whatever they've designed, if they've designed it and they've plotted it out, we'll work with that, even if it isn't done. And we can we'll try to take either duct out there, everything we put in duct, and then the fiber shoved through it, and then, or we may even take fibers out there if it's a growth area that's going to go right away. That'll be designed pretty much with Todd and his guys. So again, the nice thing about fiber, even if we do this active design and we get fibers out to the edges of town, and all of a sudden, something 5 years from now comes up, and all of a sudden 200 units are coming in, of housing or whatever, we're not accounted for, then we could actually put a splitter cabinet in there and do it again. So it's, I won't say it's foolproof, because I'm working with it, but it literally is pretty adaptable of whatever we need to do as far as getting it out there. We always take extra fibers to the edge of the town anyway, but that allows us that. And then again, where we have areas identified, and it might be, maybe it's a growth area that's maybe identified for 3 years from now, maybe we'll just take a duct and we'll push the fiber through at a later date. And so you don't have stranded investment there. And you've done a little bit of that already. You have some duct in the ground, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, we go to next year. So here's where the numbers come in. And don't have a heart attack yet. I've worked with enough munis, we need to have, I don't want to come back for more money, so we feel this is a very solid high number. And the reason we have it broke out into these areas is they all can vary. Every single one can vary, and I'll get into that with the next slide a little more, but I'll hit it now. Like, for example, we're doing this, this is budget as if we're doing the line note at the bottom. The contractors are doing every single bit of it. No assistance at all from Beresford telephone personnel. And where you guys can come into play, and the discussion we've been having with Todd, Austin, and staff, is, for example, the site surveys and the inside wiring or the conversion process. Especially the inside wiring conversion. That is an area where, when you guys are used to doing that, we just need to show you how to do it with fiber. But again, this is not rocket science, it's just a matter of doing these things and making it work. Once we show them how to do it, then they can actually do a lot of that as opposed to having a contractor. So that's money that you're paying. But now I always caution, you have a telephone company to run. You're gonna get called out on trouble tickets, whatever, and that's where we get tripped up sometimes, because obviously people are gonna want, because once you start converting people, then the coffee shop sales starts. He's got his fiber turned up, why don't I? And he can get more capacity now. But that's one of the areas right there. Our engineering is basically, you see the 5,500,000, we're using the 10%. That varies. If your costs go down, for example, if you have a contractor doing the inside wiring conversion, we usually are inspecting that. Well, frankly, if Todd's guys are doing it, once Brian or I have inspected a few to say, okay, yeah, you're doing it fine, there's no reason, it's your company, and you're gonna have to deal with your people. So you're not a contractor in there. So we that's one of those deals. The same with site surveys. Some of those things can be done by your staff, and those are huge deals that we don't have to necessarily supervise. So that cuts our costs down. And again, we do all this based on, and we're doing this based on this budget of doing it in 2019, which we're not late to the game, but we're getting there because they probably couldn't get a contractor here before late July or early August. But still doable, and I'm going to go to the next slide. I'll hit on that. So these are the things that are going to affect the budget. I've hit on a few of them already. What you guys can do will lower that cost. But again, I always caution, you have a telephone company run, just like the power guys. They got power, they have to take care of that, so they can't be out on the road all the time. But again, as Todd's talked, maybe if you've got it for inspectors, we'll be inspecting a project as the engineering part of it. We'll be inspecting that. If you've got a local person that can be an inspector, or maybe it's somebody that's coming out of technical school that you maybe want to train a little bit on my dime, and then we train them and we'll tell you whether they're pretty good, and you move on after the project's done, whatever. We'll work with you that way. That lowers, whatever lowers my costs, lowers your costs. That's straight pass through. The type suite of these optical network terminals is equipment on the houses, varies depending on what we're doing with it. If we're going to roll your existing video over to it, it could add $150 or $200 to that. Or if we're not going to, and we're going to do a different solution, which we're going to be discussing in more detail later on, that could vary. So basically, those equipment on the house and inside the house can vary from $100 to $300 or $400. So those are the type of things we have. Again, we're doing a lot of worst case here, so we're trying to work that out, and that's a lot of decisions have to be made. The labor prices are always in effect. They have went up in the last year or two, and they're starting to see labor creep because, frankly, not a lot of people want to run shovel because these contractors are going to have some shovel work. And we'll see guys come and go, but most of the contractors have some pretty seasoned people that are doing it. Their need for work obviously always plays in it when we're bidding it. As we've talked, people have been bidding most of the bidding is going right now for these contractors or the 2019 work season. Now, sometimes we'll hit that spot where in April, May, somebody hasn't filled up, which would be a time we'd be probably sending out proposals or requests for proposals, so you can sometimes run into it. And of course, the inside plant, the vendors that do the electronics, that's always a very competitive market, and that can have a variable. And probably the bottom bullet is probably the biggest thing for you to consider, because I will tell you the short answer is we can build it in 2019. Maybe more money related deal is if somebody come back and said, look, if we don't get it all done, if we get 3/4 of the town built, can you let us go into 2020? Because that can affect our pricing. And maybe we'll lower the price. Because it's a function of how many crews they bring in. And also, at this time of year, the other issue we run into sometimes is maybe the companies that aren't filled up for work aren't the ones that can put in 5 plow crews and 5 drop crews. They can bring 1 or 2. So they couldn't necessarily come in there without doing a lot of subs. So if there's some leeway there, that can make for a big difference. In fact, we just did a project literally 4 weeks ago now. We had a hard date of December 31st, 2019. And right away, the low bidders, all 3 of them that were the lowest, were coming back saying, is that open to negotiation? Well, as soon as that happened, then Brian and I are on the phone saying, okay, obviously, if we can see that maybe they don't have to be done in 2019, and that there's a couple $100,000 came off of that one. Very similar size project to what you guys have actually, so this is a little bit bigger. So those are the type of things we need to consider. And again, that comes back to your decision of, if you want it done by the end of 2019, we can do it. We'll get a contractor and we'll do it. But if that's not, I mean, you're going to be cutting over people in 2020, anyway. So it could be that, oh, maybe we've got to finish up some work. And the contractors want to be done in 2019. They want their big equipment out of here. They want to have all the duct in the ground. If they have to push cable in January, the guys might be complaining, but they're not tearing the ground up. And so that's probably the biggest variable besides what to the budget, just to keep that in mind. I think that was pretty much it, wasn't it? Yeah. So sorry, this is really fast, but if we get a ball game, I like basketball too. So that's where we're at. I mean, again, I don't want you to get too scared by the number, but I also don't, with any municipality or any entity, I like to give them the worst case and let's beat that. So we're not coming back asking for more money later. That's usually a tough conversation I like to have.
Could you explain the site survey? What kinds of things go into that?
Yeah, good question. Site survey is basically they're coming in because we got to get in their house. And where we're going to put the fiber might be different than where the existing cable is, because we're going to go next to the power wherever possible now because of some of the electrical code. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Won't bother me.
Yeah, I learned a couple of things.
Yeah. So, well, that's good if that's something you learn. But they're going to go in there, and also we're if there's a dog fence or a visible fence, they document all that. And probably the most important thing in this day and age, not to complain about attorneys, but people don't want you on their property. So we get them to sign off that it's okay. So in effect, they're going to sign off that we were there, and they're signing off that they gave permission to come in and put the railroad. Because even though you're upgrading their plant, most of the time you're okay, but again, more people are touchy about that. So basically, we're going to go on the outside of the house, and they do a quick little drawing, and the contractor will have a book that we'll have, Todd's guys will have, and the contractor will have. And they literally, when they get to that house, they're going to look at that site survey and say, okay, here's what we're doing. And one of the things we've added in recent years used to be just that. Now we've added that we want those people doing the site survey to put that, what they call a clamshell, or the unit on the outside of the house. Instead of just a piece of tape, we'll put that in there and actually run the wire into the house and release in a loop. So that when the conversion guys are coming in January, all the Todd's guys, if they're doing it or a contractor, they just go in the house and finish it up. And then the outside plant guys go to there and do their piece on the outside. So that's what the importance of the site surveys. And it's a labor intensive because they've got to call people. But again, the advantage you guys have, you're the telephone company, they know you, they know your technicians. When you're calling them, they'll probably answer the phone, if anybody will. I mean, when we do this, or when a contractor does it, they a lot of times will just get a local number Because if they're like me, I'm not gonna answer if it's coming from some, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I'm not gonna answer unless they leave a message. So that's what we're doing there, and then conversion. And that's one of the costs in fiber to the home builds. As you can see, that's a big number, those two together. And that's been something that just keeps creeping up, because time is money and labor time is money. So that's my long-winded answer to your short question.
Thank you.
Anything else that scares you to death today? So again, I appreciate your time. I mean, I've been working with Todd for a long time, so we see each other a lot, but we have been working together a really long time. So this is what we do.
I got a question. What's the lifespan of the fiber?
Right now, I mean, they'll normally tell you 25 to 30, but I know it's in the 30 to 35 years. It's just like copper. Copper can last 25, 30 years.
Your bond is 30 years or 25 years. What's the payout on the bond?
That, that's Jerry on.
So it's about
That's something we have to look at.
Okay,
That's a Jerry question. I mean, I can tell you what the costs are gonna be and however you do your bond is,
no, 25 years is fine, just so I know.
normally that's what we do. We always tell them electronics when we're doing, I try to recommend that if you do electronics, don't put that over 10 years. I mean, a lot of times we used to say 12, it depends on your accounting firm will tell you what you can use, but be careful with 12 because electronics is stuff that's changing. Think of it, it's computers, they're all computers. So if you're in that 7 to 10 year, that's probably a better deal. When we do a pro forma, if we're doing a business plan, which we don't be doing here, but if we were doing a business plan for you, that's better. So that within 7 years you're upgrading or replacing. But the fiber itself, it's doing really well.
This is probably directed more at Todd, but question comes to me, okay, so what's it gonna do for me? Give me something that I can say to them that is gonna improve what they're doing. Better cable TV, better whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's the first coffee cup question is,
That's correct.
okay, fiber to home, but what the hell is that gonna do for me?
It's bandwidth for the future. Maybe we haven't tapped into it yet, but there's, just talking with the engineers today, they got the 4K TVs, and I know Nathan, we were doing some experience in, and it was requiring about 16 meg. Now I hear today they're coming out with 8 meg, or 8K TVs. And so, where's it gonna stop? And, last meeting that I was at, each and every one of you, if you stop and think of how many devices you have in your home, and we're pretty much exceeded what we can do over copper today. We've been upgrading the electronics at the end, but it's pretty much met its match. And we're also getting some outside plant, some wires that are starting to fail and go bad.
But you know the question, Todd, is my internet gonna be better? Is it gonna be faster? That kind of thing. That's the
The
question.
short answer is yes.
Yes.
More stable,
I mean, literally,
much faster.
literally you'll be able to offer a higher rate and they'll barely even notice it. I mean, my wife and I both work from home, so we have a 50 meg, it's actually about 100 meg right now, and it's amazing just how fast that is.
So I'd say the primary reason is faster break.
The gig community thing entices me a little bit too. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's something that came about in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 years, and it was basically community development started pushing it, saying, well, wait a minute, why aren't we not advertising that we've got fiber in here? And at that time, the electronics weren't even set to really do that. But so in the last 3 or 4 years, the National Telephone Property Association, NTCA, started doing this gigabit community thing, which has caught on with people that are not involved with that. So it's pretty simple. I mean, once you've done it, I have to certify. It's like a 2-page document, certify that, I don't want to go to jail now, but we're going to get it built, and then I'll certify that, yes, I built it. I certify we got it ready to go, and go from there. But that definitely is an economic development tool in the coming, people are coming down.
And I think one nice thing as a homeowner that people of other companies have used is that your property values do increase with fiber passing up to $5,000 to $7,500 a home. Yeah.
I mean, realtors are coming back with that, which kind of blew my mind. But and even in Sioux Falls, they're saying if you don't have that, that's one of the things. So we try to convince people in a competitive situation where even if you don't want our service, just let us put a duct in there, so we can put it in there if you sell your house, so you don't have to pay for getting it all done in January. You can literally put it in there. In your case, you know, really you're upgrading your facilities, so it's a whole different situation for you. I mean, to me, that's what, you know, you're upgrading your facilities, making them for the next 25-year span, you know, or longer, so. But it's speed, internet's all about speed and capacity. Those little mice in there, I don't know how they make it all work, they do. Any other questions or comments, or get the hell out so I can get to my volume?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Next item on old business resolution 2019-02.
Should have been in your board packet, but I just handed them out too, and this is what we talked, last council meeting. For these internet prices. We're just looking for the council to make a motion to approve this resolution.
Erickson moves to, excuse me, Erickson moves to approve resolution 2019-02.
Second.
Motion made by Erickson and seconded. Are there any additional comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Doug. And Austin.
Change mine tomorrow. Change mine tomorrow.
Substation transmission project.
I'll just give you a little update. We're having some issues getting easements off by the Wappa substation. So, the only other alternative we really have is to go with underground from the Wappa substation, and we go north to the Centerville Hudson Road there, and then we convert back to the overhead. So, one thing we'll probably have, the engineer will be sending out a new contract, because it would have the underground portion of it in there. But the wire, it's each wire is 3 1/4 inches in diameter. So what has to be done is there'll be 4 6-inch conduits buried, and there'll be 2 2-inch conduits in there, and then that gets encased in concrete. So nobody digs into it, and it helps dissipate the heat off the wire. So our department would probably be doing installing the ducts and stuff. We did get permit from the state to go up along the service road that goes into Wappa. The state owns the grassy area beside the road, so we did get a permit, so we can do that. So now we just gotta get approval from Wappa to cross the road and their facilities. So what happens is that wire being that big, you can only get so many feet on a reel, so you have to splice it every so many feet. So there'll be like 3 vaults along the way, and these vaults are 16 feet long, and they're 6.5 foot tall, so you can get in there, and then the wires are spliced inside of there every, determine how many feet, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 foot buried these vaults in there. So I used the 4 ducts, one's a spare. You'll use 3 of the 6-inch ducts, and then the 2 2-inch ducts, one's for ground wire, and the other one is for fiber. There is, in the static wire on the top, there's fiber optics that run through and typically they put a 24 pair of fiber in there, and we use 6 of them for relays between the sub, and the federal government has access to open and close breakers and stuff like that. So talking with Todd and Austin and them, probably we can do a 24, 48, or 96 fiber in that static. So SDM has a fiber pit right kind of close to the Wappa sub there, so they could create a loop from there back into the city, and then there's a fiber pit by the hatchery there that they can tie the fiber into, and then it also go to the existing substation. So we can kind of create a loop there, and then Todd can telephone department could possibly in the future serve some of the rural customers with internet and stuff over that fiber on the transmission line too. So, so we have been talking about making the fiber a little bigger than the 24 fiber. So, but that's kind of where we are with the substation. It's going to cost a little bit more for the underground versus the overhead, but we don't really have an option. So,
Jay, just curious, what's the objection to granting easement?
just landowners don't want to participate. I've talked to the guy from Tulare that owns the thing to the north, and he has no interest at all in giving up easement to us. And the gentleman to the south there, he's planning on someday, his dream is to have a house there, and he doesn't want anything by him either, so we're kind of stuck. So we do have an easement on the south side of the fence line where we have a distribution, and we looked at putting an overhead line there, but we're only 48 feet from Wampa's line, and they need a minimum of 75 feet, so there's not enough room to run an overhead line through there either. So we're kind of stuck to get, it's the only option we really have. So.
And you got a few bumps along the way getting to town too, but
yes,
you can do those in the right of way.
But we can do them in the public right of way. So, but
So the underground would be only east or west?
only from the Wampa substation going north for 2,500, 2,800 feet.
2,800.
Oh.
Up to the exit.
Up to the exit, and then we would take off with overhead.
Oh.
And the advantage of doing that is when you start, we have them self-supporting poles, which hole 7 foot in diameter, and they're 56 feet in the ground, and they're all concrete, and the pole gets bolted on top because it's your starter point. So we would need one of them to start there, whereas if you come out of the Wampa sub, you need one to start. You get to the gravel, you need another one, and they're roughly $75,000 to $100,000 a piece. So there's $300,000 there that can be put into the underground, plus all the holes in between. So it's a little bit more for the underground, but it's not significantly. You know, it might be $60,000 to $70,000 more than the overhead. But
Longevity wise, just as good underground?
yes, I mean, there's not a lot of people. They use someone in Pella, Iowa, on the Red Rock deal, and I mean, the engineers worked a little bit on some of the projects. So it's just a trick to get it all put in. I mean, the bolts weigh what?
90,000 pounds.
90,000 pounds each of them bolts, so they come in like 3 pieces. So and they're all pretty secure. So that's what I'll have for an update. One other thing I just kind of want to run by you guys is with our Utilismart, our smart grid metering. We have a contract with Utilismart. It's a 5-year contract. We have 1 year left till next April. And we pay $1.25 per meter per month to have the meters read, plus all the health map, the outage reports, and all that stuff. Missouri River, they have joined with Utilismart, another 60 Missouri River members, and they hired Utilismart. So next year when our contract is up, our actual meter reading cost will go down to 30 cents per meter. Plus, it will give everybody a web portal access, so you can get on the internet or on your smartphone and see your electric bill, and you can do all kinds of fancy stuff on there. You can notifications if you set a dollar amount you don't want to go over this much, it'll send you a text message, you know. But I have had some of the commercial, Prinsco, Quality Park, some of the bigger ones that have been asking about web portals, so they can see their demands, you know, so they can kind of monitor that or start to use something, you know. And so I did contact Utilismart, and once we join Missouri River, it's all free. They get the web portals, that's part of their package. But it's not in our contract right now. And a couple of the bigger users have asked about the web portal. And so I contacted Utilismart, and they want $875 to set it up. And this would be just for the 18 industrial customers. the big users. And then they want, I think it's $3,600 for the access for the year. So you're looking at $4,700. So you want to spend the $4,700 for a year because it's going to be free next year. And I'll just tell the customers who ask, it's going to be a year. Otherwise, you can just spend about $4,700.
If the contracts come due in a year, I guess, why we couldn't wait. What's the consensus?
What's that?
I'd say they've been without it this long.
And it'd be free next year.
It would be part of the Missouri River contract and stuff. Where all the other communities that are joining, we have to pay the $25,000 setup fee for the software. They have to do that. We don't have to do that to switch to Missouri Rivers because we've already covered all the fees. So if you guys are in favor, we'll just talk to the customers that have asked about it, tell them we'll hold off for another year. So,
Do you guys have technology in monitoring in your office that could help them if they say are gonna start up a new machine and wanna know what that does to their usage? Do you have that kind of capability with what you guys have right now?
we don't really see that. We can pull up their demand and it graphs all that,
Okay.
but I can't like download it. I mean, I can kind of screenshot it and give them that.
So you have to coordinate with them.
They're Kathy and Elaine, they call the readings and you can get in and see the graphs, they're loading stuff on there.
I'm just thinking if there was things that we could do to help those customers if there's big questions.
And a lot of that's real time. I mean, you take Princeville, James out there, he probably doesn't really care about the demand, but it's his corporate people somewhere else, that they're questioning him about the bill, and then I go talk to James, then he tries to relay the message back to somebody else, whereas if corporate can see it somewhere else, that's more what he's looking for.
I guess I would say we've looked into it and we will have that option available here in the next year for them.
On the other hand, $4,700 is kind of a small piece of change when you're looking at something like this.
I mean, they are your big customers. They're the, what you want to call cash cow of the,
Is it something like we pay $4,700 tomorrow and they flip the switch and it's working then by
Well,
Friday?
it takes, I think he said it was like 30 days to get it set up by the time they enter all the information and everything.
Not a long period of time. We're not looking at a huge implementation period.
So basically they'll have it for,
You said there
probably
were
gonna be,
18 customers that would fit into this?
yes.
Do all 18 know about it?
No, I mean, I've had, like you say, Columbia Park, Briscoe,
18 into 4,700 isn't real bad.
No, it's not.
some of that's like the school, but if they would use them, the elevator, they may, I don't know. I'm sure the hatchery and Princeville and Columbia Park, the bigger ones. So you might have a handful of 5 out of the 18 that probably use it. And talking with, even the residential side of it, their web portals and stuff, I've talked to some that have done that, and they said the first month or two, they had a tracker thing that they put on there to see how many people looked at it. And the first couple months, there was a couple hundred people used it, and then after that, he said, now when you look at it a year later, they don't have anybody look at it, so.
So we'd be doing it for a few businesses primarily.
So if you look at it, if 5 of them use it, it costs you $4,700, it's $1,000 customer, basically.
They may or may not actually use it. More than-
If you say no, I'm fine with that.
I think we wait. That's what I think. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if the use is not gonna be used.
We have a solution starting when? When is this new thing coming
The
up?
contract.
April of next year, 2020 is when.
So say by May of 2020, we'd have it. It's 15 months.
What do people think? Here's some no's, is there some yeses?
Well, I was the only one that, I think it's pretty much consensus that we wait until 2020.
I'm a wait.
All right, so wait.
Thanks,
That's
Jay.
all I have.
Thanks, Jeff. New business, executive session for personnel and golf course candidate, or a motion to enter into executive session.
Boom. We need to enter the executive session.
Motion by Boone and second and third. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
You can add. All right, we're back in open session. So the first item on new business is the Banner Engineering Water Tower recording contract.
The contract is in there, and if we want to go forward with the water tower project this year, we need to hire someone to prepare all the specs. And they've also agreed to do these follow-up work to make sure it's done the way it's supposed to be. There's a $10,000 design, engineering, and bidding services, and there's $25,000 more for construction engineering services. So I've had, Tom, did you have a chance to review that at all? Okay. So, that's time to review it. If we want to go forward with it, yeah, we'll need a motion to authorize the mayor's sign.
Shall make a motion for Banner Engineering Water Tower recoding contract, as Jerry stated, what, 10,000 and 25?
Just the contract.
It's equal, yeah, sign the contract, for the mayor to sign the contract.
Second.
Motion made by Schott, seconded by Erickson to produce a contract with Banner Engineering for the water tower recording. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the new business is authorizing advertising for seasonal help.
Here to move to authorize for advertising for seasonal help.
Shot second.
Motion made by Erickson, seconded by Schott to authorize advertising for seasonal help. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Authorized advertising for sub-base materials.
Yeah.
I saw them already, so I thought they were fine.
Okay.
Are we doing more
Gravel.
seal coating this year, or?
Yeah, there'll be more seal coating.
This is
like-
just for gravel. This is
Oh,
not seal
just for
coating.
gravel,
That's a
okay.
different contract.
Okay.
We've already got that contract in place. We amended the last year's, remember?
For the seal- for the-
And one of the bid limits for department goes this year, so.
Just the
Are we
gravel.
gonna make a motion to advertise, or authorize advertising for sub-base materials?
Kane second.
Motion made by Swagan, seconded by Kane to authorize advertising for sub-base. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is step pay increase and request to take off probation Kathy Stussy in City Hall.
Elaine will take that one.
I would like to make the recommendation to remove Kathy Stussy off of probation and increase her hourly rate from $16.57 to $17.07, effective February 27th. She's doing a great job. We're so happy to have her.
Shot make a motion to start paying increase request to take off probation as Elaine stated, Kathy Stuzy in City Hall.
Motion made by Schott, seconded by Swagan for step increase and removal of probation on Kathy Stussy in City Hall, and it was 1707?
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is part-time cleaning position at City Hall.
I would like to make the recommendation of hiring Nancy Swagan at $10 an hour to clean City Hall for 3 to 6 hours every 2 weeks.
$10 per hour for how many?
3 to 6 hours every 2 weeks.
Is that on our, is that on our scale?
That's the starting scale.
Okay. Can you make a motion to hire Nancy Swagan part-time cleaning position at City Hall at
$10.
Okay.
Schott second.
Motion made by King, seconded by Schott for a part-time hire of Nancy Swagan at $10 per hour for 3 to 6 hours every 2 weeks. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, or opposed? Motion passes, sorry. Next item is authorize advertising a full-time position in City Hall.
Wayne, you want to take that one too?
Well, as you all know, Patty has resigned and I would like to fill her position. There would be some restructuring I'd like to do on some things where this person would be more active in backing up, if not entering all the invoices. So there's a little bit more dual control. And then also just back up everything, so we're not depending on one person knowing just one job.
As a committee, we discussed some other things that need to go with that position. We're not real clear on all of them yet. So we might pull the reins and hold off for a week, 2 weeks. I don't know what the rest of you, I guess that's consensus, but. So we get some of those things cleared up in terms of what we want to add to that position or how we want to structure that position.
I would make a motion that we authorize the advertising, but withhold the announcement of the advertising for a week or two. If you can make that into a motion somehow.
What you're saying is we're gonna authorize it, but we aren't gonna actually post it yet.
Post it. There you go. Smart words. We're gonna authorize advertising.
A motion has been made by Erickson to authorize advertising but withhold posting.
I don't know if that needs to be in the motion, but that should be the understanding.
Can we go forward with posting after the committee has met with Elaine and hopefully within this week? Okay. I just don't wanna delay it too long. We can.
So the motion is that an amendment to the motion then?
I just
Or
wanted to
just
clarify.
to clarify, okay.
Clarify.
Okay, motion been made. The motion on the floor then is to authorize advertising for a full-time City Hall position, but post it after review with Elaine.
The committee anyway.
And with the committee anyway. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Swagan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything for discussion?
I'd just like to throw one thing out that, I know Jerry mentioned it in his email, but if you didn't get a chance to read this little editorial that Deb Bergen wrote, and Deb Bergen is a Beresford girl, very sharp young lady that works for MRES. You can get a chance to drop her a note, please do so, because they're getting beat up out there pretty good, I think, so.
All right, thank you, Steve. Next item is approval of travel request.
Erickson moves to approve the travel request.
Boone second.
Motion made by Erickson, seconded by Boone to approve travel request. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Can you let Elaine or myself know before the next meeting, so we can cut the check for the, I think there's a registration to do by March 7th, and our next meeting is March 4th, so we wanna know who's all going, so we can go ahead.
I'd like to go. I went last year. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot.
I won't be going.
That's the one.
It's just up
That's
at
one.
camp, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll go. Billy. What's the time?
Well, no, just by next meeting, I'll sure, well, before then. We'll see, she'll cut a check on next Monday night. We have it.
Oh, you didn't see it?
Just wanna make sure we got everyone covered, so signed up. Then you get a head count.
This is the social summit, the dinner and the program.
Just like Gate City, there's strategy going.
Yeah, I'm going.
So Kane and Deline.
Alright, you better go.
I have nothing going on in my life today.
Alright.
You might want to take a couple minutes and see your kids.
It's on March Thursday.
Alright. Next. Are we good?
We gotta pay for it.
No, they went on strike in Mexico plant, so
Next item.
now they put us all on overtime this Saturday.
Next item on the agenda, payment of bills.
Blue Moose paid bills.
Erickson second.
Motion's been made and seconded to pay the bills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
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 President.
What kind of meeting leading to that?
Fast. I got to hit the gavel for adjourn.
Steve,